Good evening, everybody. It's with great pleasure that I'm able to welcome Shohei Shigematsu to CCA as our lecturer this evening, our last lecture in the fall series. I want to thank Sarah Dunham, one of our MARC alumni, who now works in the OMA office in New York, who helped facilitate this lecture, who's with us tonight. And also all of our alum group who are here this evening as well. Shohei Shigematsu is a partner of the Office of Metropolitan Architecture and has been the director of OMA AMO, AMO being OMA's research arm, in New York since 2006. Having led the team that won the design competition, Shohei was the project architect of the CCTV, the China Central Television Headquarters, a continuous topological loop structure that entirely transformed the tower typology, and that is also OMA's largest project to date. He's been the lead architect for many of OMA's most significant projects, including the Beijing Television Cultural Center, the Whitney Museum extension in New York, and the Shenzhen Stock Exchange Tower. He was also the designer of the world traveling exhibition Waist Down for Prada that was developed as an elaboration of the dynamics of the skirt as an expression of the body and movement. An exhibition that traveled from Tokyo to Shanghai, New York, Los Angeles, and Seoul. Under the direction of Shigematsu, the New York office has completed design commissions for the Torre Bicentenario in Mexico City, the tallest tower in Latin America, and 23 East 22nd Street, the precariously balanced residential tower that has a minimal footprint in the Flatiron district that capitalized on the traditional New York setback. Shohei is also overseeing Paul Milstein Hall, an extension of the College of Art, Architecture, and Planning at Cornell University. And most recently, the New York office was also awarded first place in the design competition for the Musée National des Beaux-Arts du Québec. Shohei graduated in 1995 from the Department of Architecture at Kyushu University and joined OMA in 1998 after studying at the Berlage Institute in Amsterdam. He's also been a visiting critic at Columbia University, Harvard, Cornell, and Kyoto University of Art and Design. Please join me in welcoming Shohei Shigematsu.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for the introduction. When we started to design Cornell University's new extension, we researched a lot of typology of arts educational spaces, and CCA was always came as a kind of one of the best example of the studio space. There's a laugh, but it did. So I was always interested in coming here. So I arrived a little early, so I walked around a little bit, and indeed a very vibrant usage, and I'm so happy to be able to talk here. My lecture goes very fast. It's about 70 minutes it will take, so if you have any appointments, that's a kind of measure. I would like to start from what is the, sorry, none of the keyboard works. I have to use mouse. No, really? I should be able to use the, no. But do I have to do this each time? Okay. There it goes. Sorry, so this is Japan after post-war, 45. Japan has been always defined, Japanese cities always has been defined by a series of disasters, earthquakes and the fire caused by the earthquake. And this time you might remember that the tsunami actually, of course, confirmed that metabolism that Japanese city have. It is still devastating. It's actually was really amazing to see so many debris in one place. Godzilla was somehow a representation of that unreasonable destruction of Japan. So a lot of people think that it's just a science fiction thing, but it's actually a representation of earthquake and especially the war that bombed Japanese cities. San Francisco obviously is similar. This is, as you might know better. So instead of Godzilla, you had always a kind of representation of the instability that is, in Hollywood and science fiction movies. But that was a kind of joke part. But I was always interested in the relationship of the design in general and, let's say, GDP or economical aspect. In Japan, because of this series of destruction, the avant-garde always used to be anti-gravity like this. That's from 70s, and even now, this is one of the most successful young architects in Japan. The avant-garde always is about making something unstable because of the earthquake and fire and tsunami. This is the GDP growth of Japan. You can see that it's marked by a couple of big economical crises, and it has a very steady decline since 50s. But 9%, which is kind of similar to China now, and then 4%, which is similar to America, and then it goes down and down. This is the superimposition of my life to the Japanese history. And you can see that I was born right at the first oil crisis, and after that attended university when the economic bubble collapsed, etc. So I was always basically doomed to live with a downturn. So hence I was always actually interested in the potential of the downturn, because I thought that it was a dialectic, there is a dialectic relationship between the growth and decline. For example, this is my parents' GDP growth. I mean, they're still alive, but let's say in their younger days. And this is mine. So if you overlay this, you wonder what this means, the gap. So I was always interested in exploring that, and hence probably I went out from Japan to find that out, what it means to live with a modernization. This is a building from 50s and 60s called Metabolist. You can see it has a sense of gravity, sense of edge, sense of material, etc. But this is one of the mainstream Japanese architecture now. It has no edge, no sense of gravity, no color. So for me, this is somehow, I have my theory that this is not caused by Japanese aesthetical development, but rather the long time recession. For example, one of the brand that became so dominant in Japan is called Muji. And a lot of it's very popular outside Japan too, but a lot of people think that this is a representation of Japanese minimalism. But for me, this is a reductivism that is caused by a long-time recession. I confirmed that theory when I saw this Rubik Cube sold in Muji, where it consists of 6 shades of grays. So that's another, I just want to give you a perspective in looking at Japanese design culture. So as I said, I was always interested in potential of the downturn. So I did a lot of studios in Harvard and Columbia using this theme. And I show you some of the result or findings. Basically, when the economic indicators goes down, I have the feeling that the human index actually goes up, like planning, connecting, thinking, feeling. I confirm you with that. For example, one of the typology that goes up during the recession is religious architecture and healthcare architecture. This is, like, as you know, a mega church that is developed a lot in the suburbs, attached to a shopping mall where you go with your family to shop and then also pray after. It's also true that a lot of inventions actually were made during the recessions, such as these ones. And not to mention all the architecture and urban manifestos were written during the recession. As you can easily imagine, when architects don't have enough work, they have enough time to contemplate. So this is, again, an overlay of Japanese GDP, US, China. So you can imagine my life has been defined by this gap, moving one from the other, always trying to find a better market, etc. But in a way, that kind of just, if you look at just economic indicator, it's kind of easy to imagine, okay, yeah, China is booming, so let's go to China. But it's becoming it's even more complex than that. The stars actually represent projects currently we have in the world. And this shows the human development indicator. So as white as it gets, it's supposed to be, how do you say, democratic. And as it goes darker, it's less developed in terms of human development. This is very subjective thing. It's from UN, but you can see that we used to have a lot of stars in the white area where we share the ideology or the notion of human development. But now we get more and more projects in the gray or even black zones. Which is very easy. Why? Because the economic indicators of those countries are actually much higher at this moment than the democratic countries. So this is a simple comparison: electoral democracy, non-democracy. Again, a very subjective point of view, but still dominates the economy right now. After 9/11. I was working on many American projects when I entered OMA, but after 9/11 it changed completely, and the Far East became Go East. And also, you know, the kind of phenomena of not to mention the Chinese booming explosion of cities. It's called megacities. It's over 10 million population. In 50s, it was just New York and Tokyo. Now, in 2025, you will get 29 megacities in the world. And the red is in Asia, so you can see it's completely dominated by Asian cities. So again, this is showing the same thing. And China currently has only 3 megacities, not to believe it or not. But it will have in 2025 more, like 15 megacities, which is the half of the entire megacities in the world, and entire coastline becomes one gigantic city. So somehow that kind of trend made even this kind of rumor that China is thinking about making a megacity with 42 million people in the Pearl River Delta, which is anyway already happening, but it was just kind of a gossip. But the definition of this 42 million megacity is that you can travel from one side to the other within 1 hour. The skyscraper is also traveling from North America. It was spawned in North America and traveling a lot to Asia now. And there's a statistics that if China continues to develop, they build Chicago every year. Chicago means more than 1,500 new buildings that are over 30-story high. With the understanding of those issues, I would like to show you a couple of projects in China. CCTV. This is a site in the 3rd Ring Road, very close to the intersection of the main boulevard. that cuts east-west. The site was 18 hectares. So this, in the CBD district, was planned to have more than 200 skyscrapers then. This building always gets an attention for its extreme shape, so I want to show you some different perspective. For example, this was a CBD plan when we started the competition. There was a green band here planned already. So actually, by concentrating our buildings onto these two sites, it was a quadrant. So we left this one deliberately open so that it will be used as a park, public park. So here, we named it Media Park. So this is a headquarters, this is a cultural center, which burned. And then this was going to be a public realm. Because we were always interested in, media company creating more media-related events or even filming in this park. So this is the current situation. They did the competition, so a different firm is making a park now. The building is, as you can imagine, highly complex with so many different elements. But one thing we are happy about is that we managed to convince the client to have a public route within the building. So you enter from one point, go up, do an observatory, come down from the other tower, peek into the studio, and come back to the same point to create a point about the building being a loop. The construction was very complex too. It's two inclined towers. So basically we started to build the towers less inclined than actually is. But as you go higher and higher, by the weight of itself, it started to incline and be the perfect inclination. So the last moment when the two towers connected was a big deal. We had to find a right temperature that the both expansion of both towers will not be too different. So it was a very, very early morning in the winter. And this is the kind of last beam that connects, or the first beam that connects the two buildings. It looks incredibly manual, but it wasn't. I mean, he's just, I don't know what he's doing, but in the end, it successfully got connected. So after that, it's similar to the bridge. So after that, it just built it up. The structural story is also quite clear in a way. So we applied homogeneous diagrid onto the shape, and this is a stress analysis. As red as it gets, the red is high stress, blue is in, red is in compression, blue is in tension. So wherever the compression is, we added the member, and wherever the tension is, we took out the member. So basically the density represents the force itself. It was even recognized by Simpsons, this pattern. So this is a current situation. It still hasn't opened, but it's partially opened. It has a metallic frit onto the glass. So in some cases, it looks like the building looks completely metallic and solid. They expand. CCTV has about 13 channels now, but this building was made for 200 channels in the digital age. So the amount of people that work here will be also goes exponentially higher, and this is about 10,000 people. And at some point, the client came back to us and said, we need the biggest lobby in the world. So we designed one. So it's actually connecting two levels, street level and the subway level. And the highest point is about 30 meters, so 90 feet. what we did is that from the entrance, we calculated the amount of people going to each elevator bank, and we made that movement itself a design. So this is for the visitors, and this is for the staff. So something like this. So client very curious. So this is the current situation. So it's huge. This is looking from the subway level, and this is at the ground level. It's always a bit strange to see the same building from one tower. You see the other tower. When it was not in use, basically it became a completely dark donut at night, and cancel all the lights around it, which was also kind of beautiful. Now it's in use. We have some lighting schemes. And this is the current situation. Basically lighting the kind of internal part. Shenzhen Stock Exchange is another skyscraper I did, and this is in Shenzhen, next to Hong Kong. So this was only 30 years ago. So when they designated as a special economic zone, it just grew so fast. And this is the current situation. Our building was here in the new civic district. And when we started the competition, there was the site was completely empty, obviously. The brief was quite clear. The stock exchange, half of the entire program was stock exchange related, and the rest was rental office. And then, so we organized the stock exchange program horizontally and the rental office vertically. But this was, we thought it was just boring if you just put the podium like this, so we basically lifted the whole podium to create another public plaza beneath. Which was based on our research, our findings that actually the stock exchange started from in New York under a big tree, so we thought it was a good analogy. And also it creates a clear destination for public to go in the stock exchange market. So this is the current situation. Sometimes the podium is subtle, but sometimes, of course, it's in your face. We wanted to also communicate the stock info using the soffit. So basically, people can hang out in this public plaza and then also get the info of the stock. We are actually happy that now in the time of Occupy Wall Street, if it happens in China, I'm sure it's going to be here because it's a generous space underneath. Also, it's semi-protected by the rain. From the rain. So, but if it happens, I don't think it will ever happen in China. But another tendency we find working in many different countries is a kind of dominance of mixed-use commercial development. This is city of Tokyo, big enough to have different characters in different areas, represented by different colors. If you compare that to a table, it's a la carte, a family dining style, which has, a variety of ingredients and variety of dishes and colors. But nowadays, this is too recent commercial, mixed-use commercial development done by two different developers. You can see how the repertoire of program is completely in line, very similar. So what used to be very different in different area is now becoming a bit homogenized by all these big commercial developments. So everywhere you go, the experience tend to be similar, which we kind of compare to a bento box, almost like a prepackaged meal, so that what used to be very diverse and interesting on your table as an experience became a little bit more predictable. But I eat bento box too, but you know what I mean. It's just, so it's not just Tokyo. It's actually everywhere. So no matter how we try to distinguish as an architect by facade, by height, by color, shape, whatever, inherently the programmatic constellation within the building is the same. So it's becoming an issue for us to how to tackle this problem. So this is one of the mixed-use buildings we did. This is in New Jersey, Jersey City, across downtown Manhattan. Ironically, the renaissance of Jersey City came after the 911 when the financial district partially moved across the river. Our site was here. You see the post-911 kind of boom on the coast, and this is the original city that existed. So our site was somewhere in between. The developer approached us and asked to, showed us this, so we politely declined. But we thought that basically we had to deal with a very strong commercial drive, so we decided to commit to understand the developer's norm very well so that we create something unknown from a very known sets of rules. So what we did is to analyze each program of the mixed-use program and come up with the ideal dimension out for each program, and even identifying ideal basically a volume for each program, like hotel, apartments, and artist loft, and retail and parking. And we stack them on top of each other like a wooden block, almost like assembling the buildings around you and piling on top of each other, which was a very different take. As you might know, all these commercial mixed-use towers, one hermetic shape, and you put all the different program in it. But here it's a completely reverse, that you make an ideological plan and the volume for each mixed-use program and pile them on top of each other. And that creates a public space like this, vertically. So one for residential, one for the hotel, one for the public terrace. The structure was also optimized. It's a central core, a concrete core, and a concrete beam. So after this beam, we can actually do the conventional flat slab structural or flat slab construction. We deliberately also made the facade banals to emphasize the point that this is assembly of buildings around rather than a new building. Well, developer, as you can imagine, was very happy because in each boxes, it's almost like an ideal plan, and with a premium of cantilever, which we optimize to not so high, they get very iconic shape, and which is very obvious from Manhattan when you see this skyline. Another commercial project we did in East 22nd Street in Manhattan. It's here, Flatiron building in Madison Square Park. This building is done by same developer, was already half built when we got the commission. You can see this is from Brooklyn. Don't look at this side. So this is that tower. So you can see in the midtown, the towers are so dense that you don't, you can't actually see the character of each tower so well. But here after 34th Street, you can actually start to see each tower very strongly because it's not dense enough. At that point, architects were mobilized to create additional value to condominiums, and every architects were using every possible way to maximize that value, shape, facade, reference. But since our site was very close to a Flatiron district, Flatiron, we thought that it would be great to do something so effortless like Flatiron, well, which is to believe in the possibility of mid-rise and also to believe in the specificity of the givens. So this was a given. So this tower was already made, but our tower was in a way a twin because we share the base and amenities, but much smaller, shorter. And also in plan, the site, this was a big tower, much bigger footprint. We only had 33 feet. So, but again, we wanted to be so specific. So this is how the given started. The developer had air rights from other buildings, so he could build as much as this blue represents, but he was afraid of losing the contract that he already had with these tenants. So he asked us not to go higher than this line. So we said, okay, after this line, we're going to kind of step away from the tower, so to preserve a view to the south, and then this to also preserve some light to the roof terrace of neighboring buildings. So somehow that manipulation made a building that resembles the stepped building caused by the zoning law, but also mirrored at the bottom. So it could look like a conventional New York typology from certain angle, or in some angle it looks like a kind of shy child behind her or his parents, or sometimes it looks like a parasite, or sometimes it shows its entirety, or sometimes it even looks straight like this. So this is a view from 22nd Street, between two towers, and the view from 23rd Street. And if you go on the axis of this building, you can see how weird, you don't really see how the building is launching. We mobilize the facade as a structure, so it's a tube structure. So you can see where it's darker, has more surface area to resist to the force. But whenever we were liberated from the force, we basically open up the facade in order to provide a different, let's say, facade typology from punched window to almost like a curtain wall condition. That is almost like a corset in the center. So in the most expansive big floor, we have punched window condition. And in the upper level where you're liberated from the structural need, we open up the facade, and we even made the floor-to-floor higher so that it gives completely different feeling. This is some interior. Developer wanted to have a metal facade at that time just to be a little bit more, let's say, flashy, I guess. But we didn't want to be too flashy, so we convinced the client that concrete is already a hybrid of metal and cement. So as if the rebars actually came out, we made a concrete GFRC panels that have stainless steel, mirrored stainless steel embedded in the panel, so that you can actually see this subtle reflection rather than a metal building. There was one more interesting thing about this building. The developer was so hungry in getting celebrities inside this building. So they made a contract with CAA, Creative Artists Agency, based in LA, to have a screening room. Typically, lobby, if you have any amenity in condominium, it's above or below the lobby. But because it was CAA, we thought it was interesting to do something a little bit more dramatic than that. You know, all this history of steps in the movie and the red carpet. So we decided to use the screening room's natural slope as a clue to design. So basically we opened up the entire screening room to the street. So how we did is to embed in one line a projection booth, screening, seats, stage, and the lounge, and the entry bar and the coat check into one single line. And below that, there was a residential lobby. So from the street, actually, you can see the entire room and also even to the other side. So when the pre-screening, pre-function, the curtain is open, so you're connected to the city. When the screening starts, the curtain closes and everyone goes to their seat, and you're isolated, and you have the screening. We had to also make a sales office. Sales office is where you simulate the bathrooms and some interiors. But this building, the cheapest unit was about like $7 million. So we thought that doing just a regular, you never catch anyone on the street to buy $7 million plus at the sales office. So we thought it would be nice to do something a little bit more interesting than typical sales office. So the client rented this space in Soho, just generic Soho ground floor. But we decided to put the building literally laying down. So this is the building, and then around it there's a gallery, and inside there's a showroom. So you can see we built it like a laying down building, and inside the window pattern itself became the kind of a spatial effect. It was so dizzy that not so many people could stay so long. So in the end, it was used for something else, like a photo shoot, because it was completely useless to sell. So we thought that this is going to be the kind of first building for OMA after long time, and we thought that it has a sense of upturn with a step building. But obviously, if you look at it from the other side, it also shows the decline. And as you can imagine, with such an extravagant move, the project is permanently on hold after the crisis. Now I would like to show you Cornell building. I would like to start from this. The Cornell's Architecture, Art, and Planning had the competition to do their new building. Stephen Hall won 2001. It got canceled. And then after that, the school commissioned Barco and Leibinger, and they also got canceled after SD. So we were the third architect, which is very rare. Typically, we start and someone takes over. So it was in a kind of really interesting position to be for the first time. Architecture, art, and planning was in the dispersed kind of college, facing Art Squad, but also facing the gorge. So basically creating a northern edge. Because of the buildings were so dispersed, when we started the project, the faculty itself was also a bit disjointed. Basically, planning people hated arts people hated architecture. You know, you can, I'm sure you have some of that here too, or less of that. But the whole problem was that we didn't even have a site. So this northern area was, although it had a high potential facing the gorge, it was completely underutilized, just a parking garage and even trailers. So what we did is to create a couple of ambition into one. So this is, we defined the building completely by the existing line. So this is in line with this building. So typically the box is a freestanding object, but in this case, a box completely defined by existing building. And also, all the art and architecture and planning were confined to old Beaux-Arts typology with central corridor and smaller rooms. So we wanted to also provide very flexible space that they can develop over time. And that became almost like a mini quad in the northern part. Simultaneously connecting different buildings to create more unity between different departments. It was cantilevering over an existing road. This is the current situation. And it creates a bus stop here underneath. Because it's defined by existing building, you get sometimes this kind of very mysterious view that you see buildings from both ends. In order to achieve those cantilevers, we had to have this elaborate trusses inside the building. So we didn't want to make just a conventional Arendelle truss because it's very expensive. Conventional truss, cheaper, but creates many dead zones represented in red. So what we decided is to combine both. So we analyzed the moment with a structural engineer, and when the moment got higher, it became a truss gradually from the Arendelle structure. So similar to CCTV, when you're in the space, you actually can see the forces. So you see the traveling truss. It was fabricated in Canada, transported, and put together. So this side is also cantilevering, about 48 feet. This was a naturally striated stone. It looks like a barcode artificial material, but it's actually a marble like this from Italy. And we engraved the name of the building, the donor's name, like as if it's a kind of part of the barcode. It was very interesting to provide a very open-ended studio space because it's so open-ended without any rooms. The discussion how to use the space already started from day one. So typically we provide a building and let's say have less chance to be involved in the pedagogical part, but because we provided this open-ended building, we could be involved in a pedagogical discussion, which was very interesting. But you can imagine the client is all architects, user group is also all architects or future architects. So, you can imagine how long the discussion was. So this is before the students moved in. You can see the expanse of the floor. They moved in. Nice picture. Just gonna show you. It's always nice to see them start using an element of architecture. They're playing badminton. They're not cleaning, they're playing badminton. Yeah, this you can easily imagine. We mobilized two plates heavily for environmental control. So there's a chilled beam and a radiant floor. We didn't have enough budget to have a false ceiling, suspended ceiling, so we defined the entire datum with a light box and a chilled beam, which is cladded, encased in the same box. So you read the datum. So that was this upper plate, so-called. It's mainly, or it's all studio. But here we also conceived almost like a landscape-like element. We call it dome. So it's a concrete structure as opposed to steel. So that was also our intention, to provide two main construction techniques for the students so that they can see both construction and also the way it feels. So it's intersecting the plate to provide the access to the plate. It was very complex geometry, so we made a guide that every 4 feet has a kind of profile of the dome, and then had like 3 layers of plywood sheet. So in the end, became very smooth. And then we cast the concrete in 24 hours. And then this is the situation. So this is a kind of exterior kind of crit space. It's a kind of pod seats. You can change the color. And you can imagine how quickly these people can find the most fun space. So we knew it, but we didn't want to put the sign yet. We called this underneath the plate because it's a very cold climate, so there was a lot of skepticism to this kind of spaces. So we wanted to use the soffit to provide a little bit more intimate feeling. So we referenced to typical American tin ceilings, but we blew up to 4x4, much bigger, and perforated aluminum panels, stamped. So almost it continues obviously from inside to outside and creates a little bit more interior-like feeling, even though it's in exterior. So this is a dome. There's a crit space and auditorium on top of the dome that is covered by the studio. So this is the auditorium on top of the dome. You can have a panoramic view because it's already covered, so it's kind of semi-dark. But there's a curtain that closes and isolates you from the privacy reason. So this is the kind of when it's under construction. We also designed the auditorium chair. Typically the chair flips up, but we thought that since it's architecture school and art school, we could maybe there in a lot of times need of table, so it actually flips down. So it also leaves the trace of the usage. So whenever people come and use the chair, it's left open, and some of them are still used as a table. Also gives a very drastic change when it's all closed and when it's all open. So this is the current situation. This space was originally conceived just as auditorium for architecture and art and planning, but the board of trustees of the Cornell University liked it so much, so they wanted to make this boardroom halfway through the construction. They wanted to make this room also as a boardroom. So what we had to do was to quickly design the boardroom. Typically, or the current boardroom they are using is this kind of typical one. But we thought that since they are acknowledged boards, trustees, we thought it would be nice to give them a recognition of individuality and also almost like a business first-class seats. So what we did is almost business class seats in array. But the board meeting happens like twice a year or 3 times a year in maximum. So in typical use, you don't really need them. But we thought it was transporting somewhere else or having a storage somewhere else was not so interesting. So we found this system from a Spanish company that you can actually embed the chair in the floor. So you can see the chair coming out. And what it does is that you can actually open every chair at once or individually. So you can have this kind of typical meeting, or you can have a central discussion like this, and also swivels 360. So this is how it is. So you can see how it's individual. So this was a curtain, also designed by a Dutch interior designer, Petra Blaise. This is a drawing of a perspectivist from Holland. So because this building has a cantilever, when the curtain is closed, basically you provide a virtual column. That was the idea. Also gives a depth even if the curtain is closed. So this is underneath the concrete dome. There's a bridge that takes from the entrance to the midsection of the auditorium. This is a crit space, so we had to provide some kind of device to make that happen. So this long concrete wall, we had a kind of movable pivoting walls that can separate the crit or create a room or kind of 3 separate rooms. What is nice is that there's a bus stop, so you can actually, there are interaction between people who are waiting for buses and the crit. This is the opening party. There's a huge elevator that we thought it was important for students to transport their models and so on. So it's almost like a moving room. It's about 12 by 6. They're actually, I don't know what they're actually making the model inside. So this is actually moving up and down in front of the, at the entrance, so it animates the use. There's also art gallery because there's art faculties, art department. So there's a gallery, faces the garden, sunken garden. There's a round window from the entrance. Because the wall pivots inside, rotates. So you can sometimes see a painting like this through the entrance, or when rotated 90 degrees, you can see people observing the art. So you have 2 ways of looking at this gallery from outside. We even designed a restroom. It's one single wall that separates 2 genders. So you can see, oh. It's actually quite exciting because imagine the tension that you're always sitting next to a different gender, which is very important. Of course, it's full height, yeah? So you don't, so it's pretty intense. The roof is also designed in such a way that making a point of our move. So the skylights are there to provide more homogeneous light. As the more center you go, the darker it gets. So we made an array of skylights that goes bigger towards the center. But also we changed the green density because this is a predominantly lawn art squad type of landscape, and this is much denser landscape. So we also made a kind of density change on the roof from lawn-esque to darker green. It's winter, so it's not there yet, but I would like to show you like 4 museum projects tonight, and one of them is SF MoMA, just because we are in San Francisco. But I would like to show you from this one. It's an extension of Whitney Museum in New York. This also, we took over Michael Graves' infamous proposal from 80s. But you can see that this is basically just an expression of zoning, basically full zoning envelope. So our site was here, although except this building, the building was landmarked, meaning you were told by the client your site is here, but actually you cannot demolish the building. We thought it was a kind of interesting challenge. In the beginning, we thought of just demolishing and go through the lengthy process of landmark approval, but we decided not to, because we found in the center of the existing brownstone a little tiny space like this where the building can launch. So in the end, we made the building like this. that looms over existing Whitney. The idea was to create, make the Breuer building more back, make it back to a more pure, original loft art space, and the new building will have this kind of so-called experience space where circulation and shop and all that with art, so that the experience of your experience that you have in the gallery or outside the gallery is also equally exciting. So in the circulation space, you can imagine having some art installations. And also it was an idea to deal with the scale of the art. So in the brownstone, we could exhibit very small pre-war and the post-war, and in the new building, you can exhibit new media type of art. In the end, as you might know, it got canceled after 9/11. Although we got the unanimous approval from the board, politically we couldn't get it. So we became a history, and Renzo Piano took over. I just want to mention that there's a conspiracy theory made by one intellectual that OMA and Renzo Piano is the same office. Because we always start and he takes over. Interesting theory. I wish it was. So SF MoMA, I would like to, you know who won and you know probably the current design, but I would like to show you how the process was. Typically, we don't show too much of our kind of internal process, but here I thought it was interesting to show you the process itself, because for me, the architecture, creating an option is always easy, but choosing the direction is the most difficult. So SF MoMA when it was made, it was freestanding, very pristine. But as you know now, flanked by commercial towers, so it kind of is already a little bit more urban. And the site was also very complex here, and then another site over this, on this side, preserving the parking there. So here. It looks like a complete niche where the site. But it looks small, but actually it's as big as 3 museums put together: Whitney, New Museum, and Guggenheim. So it's actually quite substantial space. And SF MoMA, by adding the Fisher Gallery, it actually becomes one of the biggest museum in America, or in the world, actually, in terms of the area of the gallery space. We didn't want to do one of these typical extensions, like the autonomous extension, or competitive, or like MoMA seamless, or like Guggenheim, this one, subservient. So I show you a couple of the options. So this was a kind of piling different programmatic elements into one single cluster. In the beginning, we thought it was exciting that the museum can actually go vertically. These were the first options. You see there. This is a shifted box, so we thought that since we had to have an office space, it could be interesting to create a kind of complete synergy between the 3 programs. So the Fisher Gallery and 3 buildings, almost like a townhouse. And by shifting the top, you create a slightly bigger floor plate for a temporary gallery. So from everywhere you can actually reach to this almost like a sky lobby. You can see how much we do. But we slowly shifted to maybe options that are less of a competitive nature to the original building. So it became more low and abstract, because we thought that the abstract shape, like Ellsworth Kelly's painting, was actually quite plausible as a backdrop. So this is one of them. Very understated. These are made for internal communication, so it's not for the presentation. And then I think this one was also something that we really liked, very abstract. Basically the gallery part and the office part in the same roof. But in the end, we thought that maybe we should go slightly more clever and extreme. So we analyzed the lowest possible building that you can possibly conceive there, which is this volume. And then we decided to cut this building into half, like a cell division. And like Ellsworth Kelly's painting, almost like two abstract circles touching at the center where the alley is, Hunt Street. And in the center, there is a expansive floor. What it does is that you can actually separate a grade. So this is predominantly office space, so you don't have to spend too much money. This is a gallery space where you can focus your investment. So this is the one that we presented. So you can see some kind of abstract backdrop. You don't really know what it is until you come to this alley where you see a kind of joint between the two buildings. It's funny. This is the. We were actually surprised that Fisher collection and SF MoMA's collection actually overlapped quite a bit in terms of who they are collecting. In the beginning, we were afraid that these two will create redundancy. So we thought that we can just make one mega floor that two collection actually meets, and also it's used as a temporary gallery. So that's the kind of this level where two Fisher collection and SF MoMA collection actually meets. So that's the only part that is connected. We also wanted to use a curved edge a little bit more intelligently, so we use it, of course, for lights and also for air. And also for atriums and circulation. So that was our try. We didn't get it. We also just did a project in LA for Broad Museum. It was also a competition. The site was here at the edge of the downtown and lower cultural zone. As you might know, Eli Broad is the biggest collector in America who actually lends his art to all over the world to a museum. But finally, he decided to make his own museum, gallery. But he was very strict on telling architects entry to keep their envelope as it is and never change the programmatic layout either. And the other strange thing was that this will be freestanding museum, but in the future, related, will actually conceive two residential towers next to it. So that had to also be taken into account. As you know, in LA, this area is always imagined as more pedestrian-friendly, or in the future will be more pedestrian-friendly zone because of all these institutions and civic areas. It never really happened. But it's going to happen probably with this building and Disney. Because the project, the envelope and programmatic constellation was so strict, we didn't know what to do in the beginning. But we thought that the ground level has a potential because of the future pedestrian increase, but also the fact that the ground level had multiple undefined, not undefined, like a changeable programs such as retail, lobby, gallery, etc. So we thought that the ground level can be very active, and the rest can stay as Eli wanted. So first thing we did was to inverse the kind of form of Disney Concert Hall and then conceive almost like a dome space. So this will be the archive, and you have like public areas around. But we thought we could never compete against the elaboration of this form. So we decided to go a little bit more basic. So we just took out the ground level and just opened. It looks like we always do cantilevers in this lecture, but it's true. But we don't want to just do cantilevers. So you can see the kind of high contrast. So there is an activity storage and display, very clear division. And also the second floor is utilized structurally and also service-wise to service both space. This is the future layout, 2 residential tower and a huge plaza. This was Eli's layout. We thought that this part of the archive can be open storage so that at least it can respond to the future plaza, which we thought is also very interesting contrast to Disney. Disney is inherently, when it's in use, inherently contained. So public is inside the box. But this is completely the opposite, that if this building has a very active edge and a dead center. So in the use also has a contrast. So we submitted this scheme. Eli liked it, so this is the archive level, this is the gallery level. So we were asked to design the facade a little bit more concretely with Diller and Scofidio, basically kind of another competition just to develop it. We decided to do, again, to think of the contrast between the two. We decided to just use the same metallic material as Disney, but having different texture. So almost like embossed metal panels. So we studied how those panels could be. But as you know, always paneling is always so obvious to use a repetition of the panels. So whatever you conceive, you will start to see the repetition because the surface area of this building is so big. So even if you conceive such a nice pattern, we were already afraid of the repetition. So we decided in the end decided to go with this, the ugliest option. We are very good at choosing something unexpected. Because we also found a system called explosion forming. So you basically put the metal panel in the water bed and with stones, and you explode them, and then the stone hits the metal panel like this and creates this kind of organic pattern. You can even see the texture of the stone left. What it does is that the explosion cannot control where the stone hits, so every panel you make is different. And also with one system, you don't have to have like 2,000 different templates, but you can actually do it with one system. So you can see the contrast between the same material, but because of the texture, the way it captures the light is very different. We also liked it because it looks like people threw stones at the Disney concert hall. And I mean, with this kind of thinking, of course, we lose the competition. But anyway, we just want to show you. After all this kind of many in my OMA history, I designed probably like 6 museums. But finally, we won. This was in Quebec. This is Quebec City. It's Battlefield Park where French and English fought. This is existing museum in the park. But they finally got the site facing the main boulevard of the city. So this is a first address to the city for the museum. So we thought that because this site sits at the edge of city and the park, we have to put these two into equation. So not just art extending by lifting the ground, by peeling off the ground like this, you can actually extend the park and the city at the same time. So it almost became an artificial kind of ground that is raised towards the city to provide a room for the city, and the park actually continues like here. The boxes are conceived by pure reflection of the need. So these are the galleries that they asked, so we made a rational shape and then piled them on top of each other. The church is also in the future intended to be part of the museum, so we had to respect the church, so we remained very low. So for the city side, it creates a kind of dramatic entrance hall. And the courtyard between the church. And this is the, let's say, a programmatic chain of programs and circulation that cuts through the gallery space. So it's like this. This is the atrium, a connection to the existing museum. They didn't want to have a tunnel-like situation, so we actually made the tunnel really look like a tunnel to kind of overcome that fear. This is the atrium. One moment you actually go out from the envelope of the building because there's a kind of small forest here. So you go out to this staircase and then you're suddenly surrounded with trees. One of the reasons that we shifted the box is also to get natural light for every gallery. If you stack them, of course you can't get for everyone. The facade is triple glazing. It's a very cold climate. Even in June, they have snow sometimes. And typically, the triple glazing is considered a very heavy-handed, expensive and heavy. But we wanted to actually reverse that situation and use the potential of triple glazing. So we made this glass that is layers of textured glass and different fritting. So you have a kind of incredible depth. And in the sunlight, you don't really read that thing because it's textured glass on the outside. But from inside, you will start to read the kind of layering of the frit. It's actually under construction. It just started. I would like to end with exhibition design because it's your school also has art. So, and also I didn't want to portray this image of OMA always trying to do kind of cantilevers and grand design. This is a small exhibition for a fashion brand called Martin Margiela. It's in Tokyo. They own this building. There's a shop on the ground level, very hidden. But the second level used to be a showroom, but they wanted to use that as a gallery, so we designed it for each event. So this is a pure space. First ambition of them was a group exhibition of a gallery called Team Gallery in New York, and not just art exhibition, but they wanted to also have a lounge next to it or together. So first thing we did is to divide the space into two areas. One is, let's say, a gallery, and one is lounge. But because it was a team exhibition, how do you say, a group exhibition, the type of art that we got was all different, from paintings to photography to object to projection to sound. So we applied all this art into that one single wall. And then with the need of, each art has a different need of light, and there are two big windows on this side. So we shifted those arts that needs darkness towards the back, and also light remained in the front area. So what it did is to create a kind of gradation from lounge to a gallery. And also it made this kind of slightly more elaborate shadows of each walls that is represented by each art. So you can see the shadows created by these two big windows. Because it was a group exhibition, and for one gallery, we also wanted to maintain a single sight line. So if you are in the lounge, you can actually observe almost every art. But you can also create a very individual moment with each art. One thing also we did is to create a gray zone where you don't have to do either of them. So we painted the backside of the wall in black so that you only see the landscape outside, or you can just contemplate without looking at art or having a lounge moment. So this is the actual installation. So you can see how the light changes from light to dark. So this is from the backside. And they did some shows and events using this wall as a backdrop for like saxophone players, concert, and so on. In the same space, we were asked in the next exhibition, it was a real-time composer's atelier moving into this space. So his name is Keiichiro Shibuya, but anyway, they wanted to make a space for the artists, simultaneously creating music in this space, but people can come and observe. Like the previous exhibition, we separated the space into half again. So one half is for the artist, and the other half is for the audience. And what we did is we filmed him, but we projected him in the darker side already, so that you get two actual him and the virtual him. But one installation we did is to have a mirror, a huge mirror hanging on top of him, like this, so that when you're composing, obviously the movement of your finger, the artist's finger and so on, it will be more something to observe. And if you're just looking horizontally, that's very difficult to observe. So this is the actual situation. So people here, this is a virtual him, actual him, and mirrored him. So the entire space with the sound, you can imagine all about his movement and his composing. At some point, he started to actually got bored and composing through the mirror. It was kind of interesting. So you can see how a bit dizzy again. So this is the projection. And I would like to end with this a little bit more frivolous exhibition design I did for Prada. So it was 100 skirts in their history, so we only exhibit skirts. And skirts, of course, is very interesting and glamorous if it's on a woman. But our goal was to show that movement and character as much as possible. One thing we wanted to use, or we decided to use, was these flat mannequins, you see in the airline counters and so on, but blown up 2.5 times so that basically the skirt comes in front of your eye level. So the idea is to walk through the forest of legs and skirts. I have to tell you, the team was all men. So you can see many fantasies. So this is the actual installation. You can see the catwalk picture always capture the movement of the skirt in a maximum manner, so we thought it was actually quite nice. And we cladded the other side of the flat mannequin in mirror, so you can see these mirrors, in a way to create a little bit more kind of complex reading of the space. And also to provide a silhouette of, from the front you see the detail of the skirt, but from the back you only see the silhouette. So you basically experience the movement more. And also we printed the explanation of each skirt on top of the mirror side, which is in a way somehow critiquing the fashion industry as a kind of Vanity Fair. That this is a head of Prada Japan, but you never know if he's looking at himself, admiring himself, or reading the text. So we wanted to create that kind of condition that fashion it's peculiar in fashion industry. Prada is a brand that doesn't have a consistent language, so each skirt had a very different character. So we were wondering how instantly we can communicate that to the audience. So one thing we did is to develop a display system that instantly communicates the character of each skirt. This is one of them. It's a vacuum-sacked skirts, but we, instead of showing the elevation and skirts, you only perceive the elevation when it's hung or when it's wore, but you hardly perceive the plan of the skirt. So this is showing the interesting skirts that has interesting plans. And also it was a traveling exhibition, so we thought it was nice to combine the ambition of transportation and then the display. So we transported literally like this. The display, some skirts had such a thick fabric or three-dimensional cuts that actually it standed by itself. So we exhibited them as almost like a sculpture. Another display, we used a ceiling fan to actually rotate the skirts because some of them had interesting embroidery or pleats. Again, we conceived a mirror in the shape of the kind of abstract shape of the skirt and printed the explanation so that you can simultaneously observe the backside of the skirt, underside of the skirt, and then the text. Again, without any hesitation, you can see the underside of the skirt because you can pretend like you're reading the text. So this is in the shop The last one, this is called pendulum. We use the car wipers motor, so everything is integrated within this hanging system. So this actually kind of moves. Yeah. So you can see, if that was connected by electricity with a wire, everyone can assume that some mechanics are there, but we embedded everything inside the skirt, so that it looks very mysterious. That's why, again, you are entitled to observe the underside without any hesitation. So I would like to end. This is the Prada Transformer we designed for them. It's a mobile pavilion trying to achieve 4 events. So we conceived 4 different shapes. One is for art, one is for fashion, cinema, and a local event, and made it into one singular object, triangular pyramid, connected by the membrane called cocoon. It's a kind of military use membrane, which used to protect like B-29 and military tanks and so on. But this is the membrane. It stretches and creates the most efficient surface. It shrunk to create a most efficient surface. But what we did is that we rotated the object each time the event changed. So one day it's like this. 2 weeks later, when the event goes from fashion to art, we rotate it and use a different shape as a different floor. So the rotation itself became the event. And then the fashion, this skirt show was the first exhibition within the building. So, but this time what we decided to do was to have those mannequins hanging from all the other surfaces, because we wanted this, since this was the first show in this transformer, we wanted to show that in the future, what you're seeing as a wall or ceiling will become floor eventually. So they're walking on the future surface. It was a kind of brilliant or a nice idea, and we did it, but we didn't know how it takes to actually hang those mannequins. So this is a kind of scaffolding just to be made to hang those things. But this was the most beautiful moment, ironically, in the whole event, in my opinion. So poor construction workers bringing each mannequins, putting one by one. Many left. See, so it went overnight, obviously, and it became such a beautiful moment. So we enjoy this kind of accidents too. So now it's almost over. And this was the final moment. Thank you. Sorry, it took too long. Sorry.
We'll open it up for questions.
I know you showed the occupations as sort of tongue-in-cheek, but what do you think are the ethical concerns for OMA for designing in China, for instance?
Sorry, can you repeat the first part? Sorry, I couldn't.
I know you showed the occupations as a sort of tongue-in-cheek joke, but what are the ethical considerations for designing in China or any sort of totalitarian state that you see?
Yeah, so what I wanted to show with that Human Development Index and our projects overlapped is that our Western, or let's say democratic countries' ideology doesn't necessarily coincide with where we are working now. And for me, it's a bit dangerous to project only what we think is right in that kind of countries. So we are trying to be very sensitive to the local, political system or the idea of human development. Although, having said that, we also believe that we can, as an architect, we can always improve certain situations. That's why, like CCTV, we were very happy to convince the client to have a public route in the building because we thought it was a very important gesture for national TV station to welcome the public, and also stock exchange, such very public, entity. We thought it was very important for them to also provide public space underneath. So, although probably the notion of what's public and private is different from what we know and what Chinese would think, we thought that we could share a most basic idea of what publicness could be. And for us, it's very important to continue communicating to those countries too, how, we think we can also contribute to whatever they believe in. And also, we often get this kind of criticism why we built in China, but we try not to also put too much of ethical issues into architecture because, again, I personally think you can always improve something even if the project is from a dictatorship. For example, we were actually operating in Libya and instantly the whole project, we were actually involved in a national level, but the project got immediately canceled because of the revolution. But then suddenly also, we were afraid that we lost the project, but lately actually the new government contacted us to re-implement the project. So it's just very difficult to project a singular ideology nowadays, so we try to be very sensitive. Sorry, I don't know if I answered the question well, but.
I guess in another sense, there was it was the time of the Nazis, and they said design the gas chambers at Auschwitz. Would OMA turn that down, or would OMA say, well, we're not ethical about that?
Well, is that a good question or a really bad question? I think we probably would have turned it down if it happens now. But of course, but if we were a German architecture firm, we probably wouldn't have. So it's, again, but at that era, everyone shared a similar or singular ideologies or a very similar take on imperialism and democracy. But now, it's so diverse, so it's very different. So for me, the Nazi comparison is not so useful at this moment. But the straight answer is probably no. But I don't think Shenzhen Stock Exchange or CCTV is any close to Nazism.
You mentioned the modernization program, and have you explored either new narratives, juxtapositions, or even new types of programs?
If we do that or not?
Have you explored any?
Good question. Straight answer is no. We often don't really have a power to basically be responsible for a commercial program because we can never possibly be. But creating an interesting intersection of, let's say, gallery and artist loft and providing a sculpture garden for public, yes, we think there's not a new program, but it creates a better condition for mixed-use building in a basic level. But nowadays, actually we lost to Norman Foster, but we were doing actual cultural master plan for Hong Kong. And there we also try to be very inventive with McKinsey how actually the commercial and culture can coexist well. So we are continuously thinking, and I think the developers nowadays, after the crisis, they are also thinking, and this kind of bento box thing is happening less, in my opinion, nowadays. But for me, it's similar to actually the question about China, engaging ourselves to China. We know that the developer's ambition is not the most interesting one, but we, as an architect, we get the commission, so we have to do it. So, within the givens, how much you can improve or how much you can respond to that situation is, for us, important.
A question about the relationship between OMA and AMO. How much is that a branding strategy for research that is already happening in your project with the firm? And how much of it developed actually another kind of strategy for how you operate?
Right. In the beginning, it was really just representing the culture of the office in the branding sense. But recently, we started to be involved in many energy-related strategies with governments. And their AMO type of thinking is actually, in my opinion, flourishing. So we are now quite serious about AMO becoming a real business entity. But that's why we actually had a couple of meetings at the what's it called? Silicon Valley area today to really discuss that possibilities.
I think Chinese people are pretty much in some way abandoning their. Chinese people are in some way pretty much abandoning their new culture in terms of architecture. And so it's like they pretty much take down the old traditional buildings and put on the latest, most progressive, the most fancy building in the capital city, which has like 1,000 years history. So I wonder what's your opinion about it and how do you feel about it?
We actually did the exhibition in Venice and New York called Chrono Chaos, which addresses the whole regime or issue of preservation in general in the world. And actually, we don't really broadcast too much, but we are involved in the preservation of Beijing. So, it's not just cliches like futon and so on, but we are developing a strategy with the city how to create a strategic preservation, and but I don't think it's just applies to China. Any country that has a modernization has a history in demolishing many historical buildings, but China is luckily at the level that you can actually think of the preservation and building at the same time, and I think that's a very valuable case. So we are hoping that we can make a very successful case in China to actually balance both.
Do you have any thoughts about historic preservation in this country?
Sorry?
Do you have any thoughts about historic preservation, like how it's handled in this country?
We had a really interesting response. In Europe, when we did it in Venice, you can imagine Europeans are a little bit more equipped in their history to preserve and adaptive reuse and so on. But when we did it in New York, we actually had a very interesting response. Not from architects, but for example, developers coming to us and say, well, thank you for saying raising these issues, because developers are often the kind of evil scapegoat of this kind of preservation issues, etc. So I think it's becoming more and more important, and we also had a meeting with the city, for example, City of San Francisco today, where they're also it's a trend that a lot of people are actually coming back to the center. And in that case, you adaptive reuse and preserving certain history, but creating a contemporary working environment and such is becoming more and more relevant. But I would like you to look at the Chrono Chaos exhibition in the website maybe, because it's not addressing too much of the preservation techniques and the notion of preservation itself, but how, like UNESCO, for example, is becoming a kind of very dominant regime, and with developers somehow capitalizing on issue of preservation. So it's preservation sounds really humanistic, but actually sometimes also creating something not so plausible in our opinion in the city.
Thank you.